Welcome to Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. Here's your host, Stacy Jones.
Welcome to Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. I'm Stacy Jones, and I'm so happy to be here with you all today. And I want to give a very warm welcome to John Azoni. John is the founder of Unveild, a content creation platform for colleges as well as nonprofits. And John and his team help higher education marketers differentiate their schools through video storytelling and by creating massive amounts of engaging video content every single month on autopilot. As host of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast and with a decades-long career as a creative director, John has learned the importance of telling the most engaging and effective brand story possible through videos. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of content creation and how businesses can create turnkey systems to produce massive content that truly gets noticed. We'll learn what works from John's perspective, what should be avoided, and how some businesses just miss the mark. John, welcome. So happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Of course. So you have spent a lot of time creating content. And what I'd love to do is have our listeners learn from you how you got here today.
Yeah. So I actually, my career after college, I went to art school and studied painting and thought I was going to be a gallery artist and all that. And I do some of that, but I ended up venturing into the nonprofit world, worked for the United Way and did outreach to the unhoused population in Detroit, and realized pretty quickly that I'm a much better a storyteller, content creator than a social worker, because I was just a lot more drawn to their stories and then sharing those stories through blogs and videos and stuff that we made. So eventually I left there to go do video. So I worked for a production company, my buddy's company, for over a decade. And we worked with all kinds of clients, for-profit, nonprofit, and did a range of work. And so I've gotten to kind of see how a lot of where a lot of organizations get it right and where they kind of veer off the path and go down the wrong path. So yeah, and then 2 years ago started Unveiled and decided to focus on higher education clients and help them create kind of a content engine that just runs itself.
So it's not like colleges need to differentiate. It's not like people can't tell the difference between them. It's not like that there are hundreds and hundreds of colleges. There's no reason for them to try to tell their own story, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of what we talk about on my podcast, is just differentiating, because I always say there's only so many words that colleges can use, and really organizations, and when you're in a particular industry, there's only so many words. Like in the video industry, everyone's a storyteller, and we're different because we tell stories. Well, every video company will say that on their website, and colleges is no different. But the thing, that I talk about, I work with my clients on, is that it's important to differentiate. It's important to work with somebody that can come in from the outside and really help you see, like, what is the culture of what you're doing here? What's resonating with students? What does make you different? But at the same time, and while that's happening, just telling the stories that exist within your community will automatically differentiate you, because nobody else, no other school in this case, can claim those same stories. Everyone else can claim that they have small class sizes and great professors. No one's out there being like, our professors are okay, but telling stories about the impact that a professor had or something would be a better way to say that. And no other school can claim that exact story. So.
And I would assume also, besides just the stories of on-campus life and professors and students, there's so much that is different between colleges, besides their size, their location, what their emphasis is, but whether they're on campus, whether they're off campus. I mean, there's so many different things that I think most of us don't think about unless we have children who are in high school and going into being college age, where all of a sudden there's colleges all over the place that you didn't even know about.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many colleges, there's so much to choose from, and I mean, it's especially, we've got in the higher ed world, there's this whole enrollment cliff coming where, I don't have all the data, but at a certain point, back in like 2007, 2008, there people had less kids, and so less students are entering college, and so a lot of colleges are kind of clamoring for attention right now to try to get ahead of that. But yeah, there's so many colleges, there's so many I've learned a lot, about
And
what's
then a lot of the colleges now also, one of their other issues that I'm sure they have to deal with is a hybrid, whether it's remote or on campus or hybrid classes, which is a completely different experience for students to be going through as well, that colleges have to explain their approach to that too.
Yeah, and that's what we end up telling a fair amount of stories around the online experience, because so many students are skeptical about going to a school that's fully on, taking a fully online program, because they feel like they're not going to get the same interaction and stuff. And a lot of the stories we tell really uplift the fact that like the people that have been through the online experience, at least with the schools that I work with, had their mind completely changed, and they came in thinking like a remote experience can never be the same, and then they're leaving with like, oh my gosh, that was great.
Including relationships with fellow classmates that they never thought they'd actually bond with.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does your team approach this? Like, I know you provide a whole turnkey system, but like when you're sitting down with the university or college for the first time, how do you figure out what the best approach is and map out what they're going to need to be doing in order to facilitate creating massive amounts of content?
Yeah, and when I say massive, I think it's more in what we do is we create we have a subscription model that's we tell 12 stories in a year, and so we batch shoot a year's worth of content, and then every month we drip out a new package of videos. So that's one full-length story, a couple of shorter cut downs, for social media, and then some other like stuff repurposed from the interview. So over the course of a year, it's 132 videos, and it's a turnkey approach. And the reason we do that is because video is so important for any organization, higher ed or anyone else, to be engaging with video regularly, consistently. But it's if you don't have an internal video team, it's a lot of legwork to hire a video vendor and then herd all those cats, right. And then at the end of that, you get one video. So and that's fine. You should have, a brand story. If you're a for-profit nonprofit, you should have a brand story. You should have maybe a video that's more informational in nature. But then where we kind of focus is more on what's the day-to-day storytelling and the day-to-day content churn going to look like, because that's the stressful. I feel like that's the stressful part. You can manage a few video projects, bigger projects across the year, but when you're constantly waking up like, what am I going to post today? Having that stuff at the ready is helpful. And so, and in the course of our creating with schools, we're filming a year's worth of content. We're giving them all of that footage and all the B-roll and all the interview footage. And that's where we kind of talk about, we're building like a massive content library for you that has a lot of potential for anyone that can go in and grab a clip and make a TikTok out of it, or throw some text over a video and make a reel or anything like that, using your own footage instead of having to rely on stock footage and things like that. It's important.
It is important. Plus, having your own footage makes sure that you have cleared footage to use, and no one will ever come after you for that.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the issues that you see time and time again? Like, what are some of the generalities where maybe there's a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge that you hear on an often basis?
Yeah. Well, I think there's just a big misunderstanding about what storytelling is. And because it's a buzzword, it gets used so often to really just like, I think a lot of organizations say, well, we created a video, so we told a story. Well, no, you didn't. A story is a story. You wouldn't tell your friend, hey, I got a great story to tell you. We're great at this, and this, and here's why you should come to our school. And this, and that's an information dump. And your friend would be like, right, where's the story? And I think, I've worked with so many organizations, outside of higher education throughout my career. And that is the pattern, like over and over and over again of, our clients will say like, we want to tell stories. We want to like really kind of connect with our audience emotionally. And then what they end up doing is pushing the project towards, here's a dump of information over an inspiring song. And that's kind of where we differentiate. And I think that those are great videos. That's part of a storytelling campaign, because you need information. You can't just be lofty all the time. You do need to inform people, but we need to kind of recenter and go, what a story is.
So you're saying frequently asked questions are probably not a story.
Right. Yeah. Marketing talking points. Here's all the reasons why we're great is that's the temptation is if we're going to make a video, we might as well say why we're great. And, but that's really making the organization the hero. And really, like in storytelling, it's about making someone else the hero, making your customer, your audience the hero, because they're the one that holds the story and the experience that you're kind of bringing people along on this journey. So yeah, I think that's where a lot of all organizations go wrong is kind of approaching storytelling from a perspective of, okay, we checked the box because we got someone on camera saying whatever, and then we put it over a nice song.
Yeah.
And
as you said, that's all organizations well beyond higher education. That is every single corporation in America, small mom and pop company, anything along those lines. Everyone makes the same errors with storytelling.
Absolutely. And I think when you approach video marketing from we're just going to do a few videos in the year, and you're not approaching it from a content perspective, that's where it just makes sense that people would want to go, okay, if we're going to make 1 or 2 or 3 videos throughout the year, we need those things. We need those videos to serve a lot of purposes. So say you were to, I talk to clients a lot. They're like, well, we want to do storytelling, but we can't find like one story that represents our whole brand. And that's where I go, of course not. You have to kind of fly a lot higher with a big brand story like that. And think about a larger thread that carries through all of your marketing. But when it comes to creating day-to-day consistent content, that's where it's such a great opportunity to be consistently telling compelling stories and staying in front of your audience day after day with little bits of content, little touch points. And that's where I think people can wrap their head around where to fit storytelling into their marketing strategies.
So how do you go about doing that? How do you figure that out?
How do we figure it out? I'm not sure.
How do you figure out what is the nuggets of, the big idea of how to approach and build that story? Like, how are you figuring out, is there a process or a system when you're sitting down? Is there a way when you're saying, okay, I'm not supposed to talk about my marketing messages. I'm not supposed to do FAQs. I'm supposed to find this like wonderful thing that's feel good and will resonate and it'll engage. It will touch people and everyone will want to come to my organization after that.
Right.
How do you start that?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And it really is it's a concept that I call arriving at the brand through the back door. And it's finding something that's some other thing that we can talk about that can help us arrive at the value of your brand, rather than going straight for here's the value of our brand. So for instance, say it's in my world, in higher ed, online school, it's a story of a single mom, and she's got a few kids, and and she wants to be a good example for them. She wants to level up in her career, and she wants to go back to school, and she wants to show her kids that, they can try really hard, and they can pursue their goals, and they can achieve them. So she does that, and she has a full-time job, and because of the online environment, she's able to put the kids to bed and then do her classwork, and she's able to fit it in on her time. So that's like a way, that's a way of like, we're telling a real story of, somebody wants something, but they have hurdles in their way, but then here comes your brand to kind of help alleviate and get them over those hurdles. And that's kind of the positioning that we encourage any organization to take, is really just find something else that we can talk about. I worked with a food service organization a number of years ago, and we did a case study on one of their clients, and they come in and do like workplace gourmet foods, foods. So they have, like, instead of a cafeteria for their employees, it's like you can get these like gourmet meals. It's pretty cool. But
something we all want.
Yeah. So what we did with that, we went into it was an automotive supplier. And instead of just saying here's the kind of food we serve, here's why it's great, what we did was tell a story about employee retention. Because food plays so heavily into employee retention, and when employees feel like they're taken care of, and they feel like they can go down to this common area and eat a great meal with their fellow employees, it builds community, and it helps keep employees from leaving. So that's kind of that other thing. And of course, we got around to talking about, here's how the organization, the food service company, really excels and is a good choice. But we got there kind of through the back door.
And so you get there through the back door. What do you have to do then? Do you sit down and do you script everything out? Do you interview? Do you do an outline? How do you prep for the storytelling experience that you're going to be capturing?
I think it's really about, I think the stories kind of tell themselves, and it's really just about having a culture in your organization, any organization, of collecting stories. You should always be on the lookout, have your ear to the ground for where are we making an impact, and where is there like an emotional component that we can communicate that from. So yeah, and I think when you have a list of 20 stories, you can look at 5 of them as being like, oh my gosh, that gives me chills. I can imagine that being a blog post or article or a video or whatever. And then it's just letting them, tell that story. I mean, there's different ways of formatting it, and you could do the more journalistic approach where you're kind of narrating it and then plugging in some quotes from them. If it's video, it could be, a little more scripted. I first, when it comes to like just day-to-day storytelling, authenticity really shines. And so really just letting the subject of the story shine and tell their own story. So for us, it's our work is all interview based. We do commercials and stuff like that. That's just a whole different category of like scripted, high production kind of content. When we talk about storytelling, it's all we're sitting with a student and they're telling us their experience.
And how long does that usually take to get a story and to get good content and to capture it all? How long is the session?
So what we do with the subscriptions is we shoot we'll shoot 2 stories in a day. So we'll shoot for 6 full days of production over the course of the year. 2 stories a day, that's 12 stories. That's 1 story per month, if my math serves me correct. And so we'll typically show up. We like to do the interviews first. So we'll take, for instance, we just worked with University of San Diego. We had a young lady, her name is Carmen, who was like her family immigrated from Mexico, and she's doing great things in the business and marketing world at University of San Diego. So we sat with Carmen for the first hour, got her story, and then kind of started to think about what kind of other like B-roll footage, B-roll being the footage that goes over top of the person talking, so you're not just seeing them talking to the camera the whole time. But what really helps us to kind of plan for a great production is to do a pre-interview. And so that's how they do it. You know, if you were to go on, I was gonna say Oprah. I don't think Oprah has a TV show.
But I will tell you as an example, we have clients who are interviewed this week alone. We were supposed to have someone go do that before the Hollywood strike. Now, you know, when this podcast was just shot, but there'll be a pre-interview segment. So just same thing, talk shows, news shows, whenever we're doing something for clients, there's always a pre-interview to find out what the juicy bits are.
Right. Yeah. And so we and there's always so much revealed in those conversations. Just a casual phone call with in my case, the student. In other industries I've worked with, you know, it's whoever we're going to interview. Each person we pre-interview just so we know. We run them through the questions, and we always find something else that's more compelling than we thought we were going to find. You can sit down with a blank piece of paper and a general concept of this person and their story, but it's not until you really get in and start talking to them, as we are, you know, right now, where you go, oh, that's a really interesting angle. I worked with a real estate company several years ago, and we did a whole workshop, creative direction workshop. And they kept saying, we want to do this differently, because here's the videos that all realtors make. They make these like just talking to the camera, just, you know, here's, you know, talking about like, I don't know, lending or whatever. There's just kind of like a template of real estate videos, and they wanted to do something more emotional. And so after a lot of talking, their brothers, one of them said something about their dad and growing up with their dad and what an influence he had on them as people. And that's kind of the angle we were trying to do, is like, how can we get their customers to connect with them and get to know them as people and get to know their value as humans. And so that became the thread. We created a whole commercial around their relationship with their dad growing up and how that has impacted their real estate business. So if we had just said, well, they're realtors, let's just go in, let's just roll the cameras and start talking.
They've sold this much in houses, and this is their number of houses they've sold. Yeah. You like to work with Don and Dale. Yes.
Right. Exactly. That's, if we had done that, that's the kind of video that we would have ended up with. So it really is about just being conscious of where the stories exist. And I think even if you don't have it, like the time to find stories is not when you need them. Like the time to find them is long before you need them, so that you have a bank of ones to choose from. Because what I notice with my clients, sometimes that haven't been collecting stories, the first time we start working together is the first time that they're really going out and trying to find, like, how are we going to find 12 of these people? And so they're asking professors and they're asking department heads. And a lot of times, you know, they'll get back stories of students that are just liked the school, 5 stars, had a great experience, you know, and it really isn't until you really just have different kind of conversations, like really like ground level conversations with individuals within your midst, that you really start to uncover something deeper than it was great and you should buy it.
Glad I got my school education. Thank you so much. I'm off to find a job.
Right.
Good. So after you've done this, and this would apply for everyone, you have awesome content and a ton of content, I'm sure, from the interview segment. At least you have a solid interview. You sat down with someone. My next assumption would be that you're going to take that content and repackage it so that you have your long form video, and then you're also creating social content, because every piece of video you ever make can be recreated into massive amounts of content and extensions.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of repurposing content and not wasting your work. You know, and so a lot, probably 80-90% of clients I've worked with will, you know, over the past, you know, over a decade, we'll put all this money into filming this footage, and then they never ask for the footage. They don't have any plan for what to do with the footage after we do this one video. And it's kind of just like, oh man, there's so much stuff here that could be like 100 different little videos. and you didn't have to go hire a company 100 times.
Right.
So and so that's really the value that we try to impart on our clients, is kind of try to get them in the habit of, like, sure, we're going to create a lot of polished videos for you. We're going to create a full-length story, a couple of cut downs, and then we're going to take segments from the interview that are talking about, scholarship opportunities or career development opportunities and stuff like that. But there's so many other ways, like so many other things that you could pull out of that interview. And then even just taking the footage that we, or the polished videos that we give you, and then cropping them vertically and turning them into Instagram reels and YouTube shorts and things like that, and getting a lot more reach, kind of like horizontal reach across several platforms that way, rather than just investing in one video. It's 4 minutes long. It will never fly on YouTube shorts or reels or anything like that. And it's horizontal. And you're just going to try to stuff it wherever, wherever you can. So yeah, it's just having a way to get potential content, I think is important.
And so how can people learn more about you and your company? Where should they go?
Yeah, we are at Unveild.TV, and you have to spell Unveiled wrong to get it right. It's Unveild. And so we have some more information. We have a pricing guide that tells you all the information about how you can hire us for one of our subscriptions and how those work. And then that same model can apply to any type of organization. We've done packages of stories like that for physical therapy companies, and did a series of stories for the state of Michigan on car accident survivors when they were changing the no fault insurance laws here in Michigan. Right. And so it's the same approach. It's really just about finding good stories, telling them, and then packaging in a way that you can get a lot of reach out of them, and then giving you all the footage. So yeah, you can learn how we do that on our website, Unveild.TV.
Awesome. What are some of the mistakes that you see along the way that people make?
Mistakes, I think, and I said, like I said before, I think the mistake is waiting till you need good content to try to find the good content. And then the other thing is not understanding the difference between storytelling and just creating an informational video. I think it's helps a lot to understand why storytelling is so effective, because when you are telling an actual story, there's things going on that you couldn't even believe in your brain, or you're imagining the story playing out. You're literally, like, your brain is firing in the same ways that the story is, so if someone hurts their arm, your brain is firing in that way. You don't feel it, but you really, there is such a deep level of engagement when you are transported into a storytelling world that really just creates such an emotional dent on you, and reflects back on the brand. And so that's, I think, so if you think you're doing storytelling, but you're really just communicating a bunch of information, you're not accessing all the power of what it benefits you to transport somebody into another person's journey. Just like you would sit down and watch a Netflix show, that's what you get hooked to that. Like no one just like binges marketing videos, but they do binge stories, so.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example. I mean, you're sitting at home and you're watching a production. If you cannot feel like you can step in and immerse yourself in that world and become part of that, and you cannot actually tactically see and feel and understand what you have actually entered, and it's just something that you're absorbing facts instead, it's a very different way of engaging someone.
Right. And storytelling, I think too is another mistake, is that, there's the concept of the marketing funnel, where there's, the top of the funnel is your awareness, and then all the way down to, leading someone to make a decision. And I think too many organizations kind of stay in that middle of the funnel. We're pitching to you. We're pitching to you why we're the best. And that's why I say, like, if someone already knows they have a problem and is ready to seek out a solution, stories might not be the greatest solution right there. They might just need tactical information. So you do need both. You just need to understand, like, where they are in the funnel and what you're trying to say to them at those moments.
Yeah. And for all of our listeners who are like, I'm not a higher education, I've stuck around, I'm hearing about content, you can also think about stories as being something as a case study. Right. And it's just a different word and a different way of actually telling your case studies. If you are a brand or an agency or any type of service business, where you're able to create a story out of what work you have actually done and why it's relevant. And again, make it immersive where someone can step in, feel it, and be like, oh, I get it. I want that for my brand because that's the solution I too need because I have a problem.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Case studies. It's any kind of story that highlights the impact that your product or service had on somebody. Yeah. There's videos about the product or service, which are great, but then there's videos that tell the story of the impact they had, on someone's life.
Yeah. Well, John, really appreciate your time today and shedding more of your story and how y'all work and how others can actually tell better stories on their own or through services. And I encourage all of our listeners, reach out to John if you are with a higher education, nonprofit, or just want to have questions answered in regards to stories, because he might be able to help you.
Absolutely.
Well, John, thank you so much again.
Thanks. It was great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Marketing Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. I look forward to chatting with you this next week. And until then, if you want to figure out how to tell your brand story by getting it immersed into other people's content, whether that be influencers or product placement in movies and TV shows, reach out to our agency. And I'm happy to have a chat and let you know what the next steps are and how you can approach. Have a great one. Looking forward to chatting with you soon.